try them if you like. But let me get all my little stuff out of here. Like carrying traveling in a trunk all the time. I guess make sure I got everything. I think I got everything. Okay. Lettuce. Tons of lettuces out there. And it's all preference. It's all preference. The least of the bunch, I would tell you, would probably be iceberg lettuce. Not a lot of nutrient there, just lots of water, not a ton of nutrient. But iceberg lettuce basically came about simply because it's easy to grow it in mass, get it out the door. Everybody wants lettuce. Great on sandwiches, that kind of thing. I don't use iceberg lettuce at my store. I prefer just biting the bullet and buy the mixed greens or spring mix. You find them in different stores. That's basically what it is. So you have a combination of a lot of different greens in there. I prefer that. That's my taste, and I just rather do it that way. So I figured when I started to say, I'm like, well, you know what? Either I do feed my customers the way that I like to eat, or not do it at all. So let's just run with it. We see where it goes, right? All right, but the egg, cucumber, and tomato salad. In this little container here, basically what I've done, the greens that you see here are what's called artesian greens, artesian lettuce. Same thing that you're going to find in that mix container of spring mix. It's basically the same greens. Okay, so don't let the names throw you off. It's basically the same thing. Cucumbers, and if you can, it kind of blends together. Cucumbers, there's some celery in there. And one thing that I find over time is that a lot of people will just throw the leaves away and stalk the lettuce. You ever do that? Like the leaves on a lettuce stalk. Young lady that started working for me a while back, she would come in, she was doing something like a particular dish that I'll get her started with, and she'd trim all the leaves off and push them all aside. Why are you doing that? Nobody wants to eat the leaves. Like, on the contrary, most of your flavor is going to be in that leaf. Don't be afraid to use them up. They're good. They're really, really good. They are really good. But anyway, what's in this container? My artesian lettuce, I have cucumbers, and I have celery. You can dice that any kind of way that you want. That's totally up to you. Okay? That's totally up to you. When you're talking about cooking, guys, really, like I alluded to earlier, the reality of it is that you're cooking for yourself. Build it the way that you want it to taste. I mean, because a recipe says, and I do this all the time. If I decide that I want to look at something, and if I find a recipe out of my books that I kind of like, I build it from that recipe, exactly as the recipe says the first time. And then if I want to make an adjustment in it, I'll make that adjustment. And then it can be my own. I'll build it the way that I want it done. Now, there are some things that I built my own recipes on. My time in the military, I had the pleasure of living in Louisiana for quite a while. Fell in love with gumbos, etouffees, creoles, that kind of thing. But Louisiana, if you ever spent much time there, you'll find they don't like to share that stuff. I'm not telling you what's in this. So, and again, this goes back to me being glad that I spent the time with Rose that I did, because what I ended up doing was building my own recipe. Took me some time to get there. So my shrimp and grits that I serve there at my cafe on a daily basis is my own recipe. My gumbo is my own recipe. My etouffee is my own recipe. And no one else knows how to do that. So even with my staff, like I tell them, when we get to the day that I know you're not cheating on me, I'll let you make that. But up until then, right now, let's just Okay, but with this salad, we're going to add some tomatoes, some celery, some radishes, and simply some eggs. Okay? Now, and it basically, all it really is just a tall salad. We're not going to make this complicated. But anytime you're making these salads, guys, really, I mean, you have the leeway to take out, add to, whatever you want to take out, add to. Okay? Lots of times I've heard people talk about, well, I've heard people say, well, you know, this is how it's always been. Yeah, but doesn't mean it has to be that way. Doesn't mean it has to be that way. Now, yeah, in the culinary world, there's some dishes that wouldn't be what it is if you leave out some ingredients. You'll find sometimes like sauces per se, a supreme sauce, which is really a really hearty, thick, creamy sauce that's finished with a white wine, a dry white wine. If you don't put the white wine in it, then you really don't have a supreme sauce. Because that wine gives it that final taste. So yeah, there are some exceptions to the rule, but there are things that you have a lot of leverage with that you can kind of twist and make it your own. It's kind of like mom and grandma, you know, they're always cooking stuff, and well, I don't do mine that way. Well, yeah, okay, well, that's right. All turns out well. It's all about taste. All right, but our tomatoes, the artesian lettuce, some celery, and on your tomatoes, just say preference. A lot of people would use just your regular vine-ripe tomatoes or beefsteak tomato, whatever tomato it is you're happy with, that's perfectly fine. I like plum tomatoes, I like grape tomatoes. And if I'm making a tomato sauce, I'll use a Roman tomato. And it's only because the meat of the tomato is very, very different. Very, very different. So, depending on what you're using it for, that's what my choices come in. All right, hard-boiled eggs. Some do, some like them, some don't, and that's okay. But for today's purpose, I'm just going to put some on here, okay? So we'll put a little hard-boiled eggs on top. And again, as I tell my folks at the store, you can make the best dish in the world with the best flavor in the world. But me as a customer, if I walk up here and I look at that, and it doesn't look very good, my eyes are already telling me you don't want that. We eat with eyes first. I'm sure you guys know that. If it doesn't look good, I may not want to try that. And it can be the best taste in the world. So take a couple extra minutes. Make it look like something, you know. Put a smiley face on it. I'm not going to do that on all this, but do whatever it is you want to do with it, okay? Now my dressing here, really simple. I have some olive oil. Always good to have olive oil. Now I always buy the virgin olive oil and I buy the light tasting olive oil depending on what I'm doing. I use the light tasting olive oil because I can do a few more things with it, and some things I don't want that strong taste in it. So, but you know, preference. But within this dressing here, I've got some olive oil, I've got some green onions, a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, some lemon juice, and I've got some crushed garlic in here. Now, I'm not going to leave the garlic in, because if you leave garlic in, a lot of times it can make things bitter. Okay, but you just want it to impart a little bit of flavor to your dressing. So I'm going to pull that out, if I can find it in here somewhere. And before we finish dressing this, we'll put that in one piece. And personally, I really like it. My wife often tells me, did you think you had enough garlic for that? Thought I missed some. Trying to tell me something here? But I love garlic. So whether I'm smoking meats or whatever, you can bet it's going to have some garlic in it. Okay, but with that, you just drizzle your dressing over top. gonna let it take care of itself, if you will. But this is just a basic salad. I mean, it has a nice color to it, and hopefully it has a decent taste to it. But let's go on to, we're running out of time here, but let's go on to our next little entry here, this quinoa. But again, like I said about quinoa. Quinoa is a very potent little grain. A lot of possibilities. You can do it. You can do so many different things. Right? You can put it in a meat. Do so many different things. And I would really suggest that if you ever thought about using quinoa, you go online and just put in quinoa, Quinoa, I guess it is. Put that in there and quinoa recipes. See what comes up. You'd be surprised at stuff you can do before. But today's adventure, we're going to do actually a quinoa. I'm going to cheat notes to make sure I'm online. A quinoa and shrimp salad is what this is. My quinoa salad at the store basically is a mixture of fruit, vegetables, and olive oil. And that's basically what we use with it. But this is your quinoa. As I said, really simple to cook. 2 cups of water to 1 cup of quinoa. Just let it cook until it absorbs the water. Take it off, put it off the stove, put a top on it, and let it finish. All right. A little bit of salt always goes a good long way. I mean, you can salt it, but just using kosher salt again is really, really, really difficult to oversalt it. And you know, so don't be afraid to use it. So in this container is what I have here. Is basically, again, tomatoes, capers, fresh basil. Now, a lot of times people ask, well, why do you use fresh basil as opposed to dry? You can use dry. Fresh gives it a much more appealing look and taste. Okay, so, and that, again, is very, very important. When you start talking presenting foods and that kind of thing, you know, you don't always want to just rely on that. But also that's in here is green onions. So, and of course, lemon zest. A little lemon zest. Okay? So we're going to add these in here. My shrimp. These are just the same shrimp that you can buy at Philo or any grocery store, salad shrimp, which is just this is a smaller shrimp. Or if you have shrimp in your freezer or something of that nature, chop it up. It's the same difference. It's the same difference, okay? We'll add some shrimp. Now mind you, when you're doing salads and that kind of thing, especially one of this nature, you don't want to add any more liquid than you need to do. Okay, the more liquid you add, it takes away from the seasoning that you put on it, and it kind of makes it a little bland sometimes. So come on, guys, just play with me. All right. There you go. My dressing, again, olive oil. I've got some pepper in here, a little bit of salt, a little bit of lemon juice, nothing complicated. Alright, all you're really doing, gently going to mix all this stuff together, put your dressing over top, and again, your dressings, you know, you can really use anything, and that's the really beautiful thing about salads, is that, you know, you can really make it any way that you want it to be. claim it as your own, if you will. But don't cut yourself out of that opportunity to learn how to do it differently. It's always good to do that. You know, when I say we, wife and I, we challenge each other every now and then, because we were fortunate when we bought the house that we live in now. There ended up being these peach trees there in the yard. So one year, one of the branches falls out the tree. It just happens that the peaches were ripe. Well, she comes up with the idea, okay, well, we're going to have a peach ice cream challenge. You make yours, I'm going to make mine. We'll see which one is best. Who you think won?
She did.
Who?
She did.
She what? I'm not going to tell you who won, really. No, it was good. It was a lot of fun. And, you know, we played with that kind of thing. We played with. I'm really, really lucky in that regard, because she is an avid gardener. Loves the garden. The house that we once lived in, it was a little small patio home kind of thing, and she always talked about, well, you know what, I'd really like to, well, if we ever bought a house, I'd really love to have some place that I can plant a garden. So when we were lucky enough to buy the house that we were in, consequently the house ended up with 2 full kitchens in it. But the guy that lived there just needed to leave, so we got it at a really good deal. So it was a blessing. So we bought this house as substantial yard space. So